So you found this great property in pre-foreclosure. You talk to the seller. They're open to you taking over the payments, but they have a question. They want to stay in the house after you save it from the auction. And you think to yourself, well, let's see. I can pick up this property, have a new property in my portfolio. I've got a built-in tenant that's going to pay me. Man, that's a great scenario. Why shouldn't I do this? Well, I'm going to tell you why. We're going to talk about seller leasebacks today on the Sub2Deals Show.
Are you looking to up your real estate investing game? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Sub2Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle.
Hey, Sub2ers, my name is William Tingle of Sub2Deals.com, and I would like to welcome you to this episode of the Sub2Deals Show, where we talk about all things subject to. Yeah, occasionally we go down a rabbit trail. We'll talk about some other stuff, but it's always things that are real estate topics, and they're always things that will help you with your real estate investing business. Now, today's topic is seller leasebacks. Listen, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and from time to time, the subject comes up. Should I let my seller stay in the house if they want to stay in? And my answer to that question has always been the same. Well, heck no, don't let them stay. In fact, we go to great lengths to try to make sure our transaction is wrapped up as quickly as possible so the seller's completely out of the picture and we just don't have to deal with them anymore. That's one reason we prefer a straight sub-2. If we owe the seller any equity, we try to arrange things where we can give it to them at one time so they can move along. Sometimes, the seller takes back a note. Sometimes we'll do some other creative financing, but by and large, we try to make these transactions as clean as possible. We're going to talk about why today. We had a post in the forum this week. There was an investor that apparently had done a sub-2 deal with a seller, and actually, let's just talk about their post a little bit. They said they purchased a home subject to, but the seller changed their mind and decided subject to was not the best route. The investor claimed the deed was already transferred to me, but the seller felt like they weren't getting enough money out of the deal, so they obtained an attorney to try to get them to agree to selling the home and splitting the proceeds. And they had months and months, according to the post, of negotiation, offer and counter offer. And the investor finally agreed, yeah, I'll sell the house, I'll split the proceeds with you 50-50. They were trying to get the contracts for that wrapped up, and then the seller changed their mind again and told the investor they were just going to do something to cloud the title. And not only that, after this investor had brought this mortgage current, the seller quit making the payments again. I mean, it was a really complicated story, but what it all amounts to is the investor bought a home subject to, cured arrears, gave the seller cash, let the seller stay in the home with the agreement, verbal agreement, mind you, nothing in writing, that the seller would continue to make the mortgage payments while they stayed in the home. The seller changed their mind, decided they weren't getting enough money, wanted to renegotiate the terms after everything had been done. It was just this huge convoluted mess, really. And it's turned into, as a matter of fact, as of this morning, this post had about 140 responses. Reading the responses let me know just how uninformed a lot of investors really are about how this sort of thing really works. So I decided today we would go over that, and I would try to help people understand a little bit better why this just isn't a good idea. In this particular situation, I asked the investor who made the initial post a few questions to give us more clarity in the situation. What's their equity position in this thing? I mean, is it a $200,000 house they took over a mortgage of $100,000 on? Is it a lot of equity? Is it no equity? And things like that. What their what their plan was moving forward. Didn't get an answer from that investor. As a matter of fact, that investor, I don't think got appreciated a lot of the responses they got, so they pretty much quit commenting. But in the end, I just laid out what my plan would have been for the deal anyway. This thing has gotten so nasty that I would literally just walk away if the property uh, had equity. Of course, if it didn't have, I would walk away because there's really nothing to gain. You're not going to get anything out of suing the seller because they can't make their house payment. And what is there to get? But even if there was equity, I would walk away. And I tell you why. If they really do have the deed in their name, in the investor's name, and there's an overage at the auction, then they'll probably get their money back anyway. Being the owner of record, if there's an overage, the owner of record at the time of the auction is entitled to that overage. So after any junior liens or judgments or anything are paid off, if there's anything left, they can collect that. So that's the route that I would go. I wouldn't proceed to try to fight this person, take them to court, or do any of those things. Um, so let's just talk about some of the potential problems in doing a seller leaseback. When you walk into one of these things, a lot of times it seems like it could be an ideal situation. You find a property, it's in distress, it's in arrears. You can make up the back payments, and then you've got a built-in tenant or buyer that wants to buy it back from you. So you don't have any marketing cost. And I know that's attractive to a lot of investors. We even had a response in the thread from an investor who claimed that was going to be his model moving forward, but this has maybe changed his mind a little bit, as it should. But some of the potential problems, well, number one is a failure to get paid. If this homeowner can't make their mortgage payments, let's just say it's $1,000 a month, and you're going to bring the mortgage current, so you're going to put some money into it, and going forward, you expect this person to pay not only the amount of the mortgage payment, but an increased amount because, I mean, if you're an investor, you're looking to make money. So let's say you decide to take it easy on the homeowner and you're only going to make the payment $1,200 to you. If they couldn't make $1,000, do you think they can make that extra $200? I don't think that's going to happen. So that's a problem. Number two, with the seller staying in the deal and even staying in the house. I mean, just think about it from the seller's perspective. Most of these people are going to get the feeling, listen, somebody really came and just stole my house. And now I got to pay more than I paid before. I don't even own the property anymore. People tend to get a little bit resentful. It's just human nature. When you're in distress, when you're in trouble, and somebody, the comes along on their white horse and waves their sword and solves your problems, you're very appreciative, you're very thankful. But that only lasts for a little while. And, as time goes on, you become a little bit resentful because, especially in a situation where you're living in the house you used to own and now you're renting it. And so we see that happen a lot. People forget that you were their savior a couple of months ago, but now you're somebody that's stolen from them, that's taken something from them. So a lot of times there's seller's remorse in those situations, and especially when they've talked to their cousin or their brother or their friend down the street or whoever, and they pointed out to them that, listen, that house is worth 200,000, you only owed 150, and now somebody else has got $50,000 of your equity. And not only that, but you're having to pay a higher payment than you paid before. You can't write it off as a deduction. You're just a tenant. You really got screwed. And they go, yeah, that guy really took advantage of me. It doesn't matter that you were going to go to the auction in a couple of weeks and not have a place to live and lose that equity anyway. So it's easy for people to have hard feelings, and you don't want to be in that situation, because the next step when they quit paying you is you're going to try to get them out of the house, and so they're not going to go easily. They're going to talk to the free attorney, the legal aid attorney who's going to say, "Oh no, you have an excellent case, and we're going to take this thing to court. They're going to stay as long as they can." And when you finally get in front of the judge, and you say, "Well, Your Honor, this person was in trouble, and I paid, 5,000 and bailed them out, and now I've got 50,000 in equity, and they're going to look really pitiful standing there in front of the judge." And especially nowadays when tenants and the underdog, I mean, they have all the rights. You're just a greedy investor, so you really don't want to find yourself in that position. I'm telling you, the best thing to do you know, is just to make sure that the seller understands that a condition of you buying the house, stopping the foreclosure, maybe giving them some cash, is going to be that they have to be out of the house. There have been many, many times that we have delivered a cashier's check to a seller as they were loading, the last boxes onto the moving truck. I mean, they don't get a penny from us, and the arrears do not get cured with the bank until we get the keys to the house and they're out. And that's just the way it is. That's the way it has to be. Doesn't matter if it's a screaming deal. It doesn't matter how much equity there is. If that seller stays in that house and decides to make trouble for you, it is going to be a lot of trouble, and you don't want to be there. So just don't give yourself that headache. Make sure that they're out of the house before they get any money and before you send anything to the bank. Or, I mean, it's really a gamble, and if you're a gambler and you want to take those chances, you can, but you just need to know what the likely outcome is. And that's just really the way things are today. People, with all the landlord and eviction issues and everything else that's going on, it's just not a place that you want to be. There are other deals. There are houses that are vacant that you can take over payments on when the people have already vacated. In fact, I mean, vacant properties, they're your very best options right now. So, looking for these where people want to stay, that's one of the first questions we ask. Have you made some plans? Have you already found a new place? Because we're just not going to allow them to stay. I'll tell you, the only exceptions that we've ever made have been cases where people were absolutely not in financial distress. We've actually done a handful of deals with people where they were building new homes and they wanted absolute certainty that when that new home was completed, that they could move straight into it and not have to have one single extra mortgage payment. You know how it is when you're building a new house and the builder says, "Well, it'll be done in July," and it's not really done until August. And they didn't want to list the house because if they have a potential buyer, the buyer's going to want a commitment on a date they can move in. And if they commit to a date and their new house isn't ready, then they have to move into an apartment for a short term, and it's just a big headache. We have done a few of those, but we did those a little bit differently. We went ahead and got the deed and did the closing. And, we just had the person continue to make the mortgage payments. These were people that were not in distress. They could easily make their payments. And we didn't have any money in the deal because the house wasn't in arrears. It wasn't in foreclosure. So we got the deed, went ahead and got it filed, got some seasoning on that. They continued to make their mortgage payment. They gave us a call when their house was ready and said, "Hey, this is our last month. We'll be out." And we made the transition there. Are those okay? Sure they are, because it's a completely different set of circumstances. But as far as letting people stay, that arrears have to be made up to the mortgage company, and you have to give them cash. In this deal that we're talking about from the Post, and if you guys aren't a member of the Sub2Deals forum on Facebook, you need to join. I'll put a link to the post in the show notes so y'all can go check it out. But if you're not a member, of course you'll have to join to be able to view it. But in this situation, the investor gave the seller $5,000 while they were still in the house. Of course, that money's gone. You're just going to have to walk away from that. There's no way you can do anything. Like I said, in this particular instance, I would just let this thing go. I would wait till it went to the auction. I would just monitor it from afar And when it went to the auction, I would see what happened. If there was an overage, I would go in to claim it. But otherwise, no. This thing is a lot of newbie mistakes. And listen, let me take this opportunity to say, there you can read this, and I see this in forums all the time. Hey, don't buy a course. You don't need a mentor. You don't need a partner or any kind of training. You can learn this business all on YouTube or podcast or things like that. Listen, there's a lot of information in podcast and on YouTube. I mean, it's a lot better than when I got started. I mean, all we had were a few forums, but there are details that you aren't going to get in a podcast or on YouTube. You're not going to get everything step by step. And having somebody there to answer questions for you, and a step-by-step guide, you're going to have to spend money on education at some point. And there are a lot of educators. I'm not, I offer training programs and I offer coaching, but I'm certainly not the only person. All I would recommend to you is that you just vet the person that you're learning from. There are a lot of people out there who are flashy and have a big following and look great, but you have to pay really close attention to what they're teaching you. So just remember that, a lot of advice that this investor got in the post was to go to court, sue this person. It's not right for them to take your property. If it's yours, you made a deal and those sort of things. I understand principles, and I understand trying to do, expecting somebody to follow through with their agreement. But there is a point where you throw good money after bad, and you have to just learn when to let that stuff go. The original poster, the investor did make a comment once that walking away wasn't an option. They needed that $5,000 back. But I'm telling you, as investors, one thing you're going to learn is that walking away is always an option, and sometimes it's the preferred thing to do, even if you have some money in the deal. So always know that that's a possibility. And when you write a check, you could very well lose it. That's one reason that our due diligence process that we use starts out with all the things that can be done at low and no cost first. We don't spend the bigger money until the very end. We want to be as sure as possible that this is something that's going to work out for everybody. So if you want to learn those processes, if you want to learn more about how to do things correctly, we've got some coaching opportunities for you. We've got a coaching group. We've got JV partner stuff that we'd be glad to talk to you about. So anyway, seller leasebacks. It's not something that you're generally going to want to do. If you'd like more information about that, you can contact us and we're glad to talk to you about it. So that's it for this episode of the Sub2Deals Show podcast. You can find the show notes for this episode along with a complete transcript at sub2podcast.com. And hey guys, if you enjoyed this episode and you enjoy the stuff that we share with you, we would love it if you would subscribe and give us a 5-star rating and review at Apple Podcasts. It only takes a minute and it helps others discover the show. You can subscribe as well as leave a rating and review by visiting Apple Podcasts and just do a quick search for the Sub2Deals Show. And finally, again, if you haven't yet, you can join our absolutely free Facebook Subject To group at sub2forum.com. And we got a ton of resources for you to help you grow your real estate investing business at sub2deals.com. We've got articles and all sorts of things that are absolutely free that can help you out. So until next time, keep learning, keep talking to sellers, and you will buy some houses.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Sub2Deals Show with William Tingle. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit sub2deals.com, on Facebook at Sub2Deals. We'll catch you next time.